Hi everyone. So I've been thinking about friendships and we've read a couple of stories and poems about that. And one of the things that I was thinking about is sometimes, even when we have friends, we might feel a little bit lonely. We might feel a little bit like we don't have as many friends as we might like. And that's totally normal to go through that and to feel a little bit lonely sometimes. And I picked a book today. Actually, Isaac helped me pick this book. I had a little conference with Isaac this morning and he helped me choose. This book, it's called A Bad Case of Stripes, and it's by David Shannon. He wrote the story and he did all of the pictures. And it kind of speaks to that idea about having friends, being ourselves, feeling lonely sometimes, feeling like we might not have a lot of people in our lives that we consider to be our friends. And it also is a little bit funny and silly to go with all of that. So it's called A Bad Case of Stripes, and I want you to think about how she feels in the story and why she does the things that she does, what she's thinking when she does the things that she does, because it kind of affects the way she looks, which is hard to explain, but you'll get it when I read it. A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends did not like lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting. Fretting means worrying, even more than usual. It was the first day of school and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. When you want to impress someone, you want them to like you and you want to act and look a certain way so that they do like you. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror, and then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment," which is kind of like something that comes in a tube, a little liquid. "That should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots!" And sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change the channels on a TV. Look at all of those different patterns. So every time another kid would think of something, they would yell it out and Camilla would turn into that. That's kind of an important idea to think about when you're hearing this story. Camilla wasn't thinking about herself and what she wanted. She was only thinking about what everybody else was thinking about her. And that turned her into all these different patterns because other people's thoughts about her were so powerful, more powerful than her thoughts about herself. That night when Mrs. Harms, the school principal, called, he said, sorry, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called, he said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid the stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago, everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice big plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. So remember, the reason she won't eat the lima beans, even though she likes them, is that other people don't like them. And she thinks that they will laugh at her for doing something that they don't like, even though that's something that she likes. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over." And about an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." And then the specialists went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed and tacked and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Bumble. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," said Dr. Cricket. "Or a sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialists, and they each handed her a bottle filled with different colors of pills. "Take one of each before you go to bed." And then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh my goodness. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, and then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. "Or possibly some sort of bacteria," said Mr. Mellon. And then out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Or it could be a fungus," added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus splotches. The experts looked at Camilla and then at each other. "We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab," Dr. Gord said. "We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. Poor Camilla. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the ever-changing kid. Soon a huge crowd was camped right out on their front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies. Remedies are things that are meant to fix an illness. From psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, old medicine men, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. Look at her, poor girl. She's covered. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned, because slowly she started to melt into the walls of her own room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed, "Ah!" and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And her mother began to sob. So look at that picture and you can see Camilla. The pictures on the walls are her eyes. There's a big pink bow. The bed is in the shape of her mouth. And her nose is her dresser. At that moment, Mrs. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a very bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said. "These might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. "Oh my, no," replied the old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plate full of lima beans, more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," the woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started to walk toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, but being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. So she finally couldn't stand it any longer. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," said the old woman with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. "Mmm," said Camilla. Suddenly the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. The whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head, and then she went outside and disappeared into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care anymore. She didn't care what they thought. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never even had a touch of stripes again. So the only stripes she has are the ones that are on her bow now. So that's a funny little story to listen to, and it also has something that I want you to think about. So she was so worried about having friends and about what her friends would think of her that she was afraid to be herself. She was afraid to like and to eat lima beans in front of her friends because she thought they would laugh at her and make fun of her for liking something that they did not like. But every person is a little bit different, and every person likes things that are a little bit different from other people. And that's what makes having different friends so interesting. So even if you like things that other people might not like, or even if you like things that sometimes other people might make fun of or make you feel embarrassed about, it's still so important to be who you are. Don't change who you are because you want your friends to think of you a certain way, because they're not thinking about the real you. They're thinking about the you that you put out there that is not true. If you like lima beans, eat them. And nobody, even if someone makes fun of you, they will stop making fun of you when you just are who you are. And then you don't change and change and change and change and change based on what other people think or feel about you. You get to be yourself. And that's the message really about this story, is that you You might start out feeling lonely or feeling like people are making fun of you or feeling uncomfortable about how you're different from other people, but everyone is different. And sometimes you feel like you've got lots of friends and sometimes you feel like you might not have as many. And that's okay to feel that way. The poem I chose goes along with that same idea by Shel Silverstein. It's out of the book A Light in the Attic, and it is called Nobody. Nobody. And there's no picture that goes with it, so you just listen and you build the picture in your mind. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares. Nobody picks me peaches and pears. Nobody offers me candy and cokes. Nobody listens and laughs at my jokes. Nobody helps when I get in a fight. Nobody does all my homework at night. Nobody misses me. Nobody cries. Nobody thinks I'm a wonderful guy. So if you ask me, who's my best friend? In a whiz, I'll stand up and tell you, nobody is. But yesterday night, I got quite a scare. I woke up and nobody just wasn't there. I called out and I reached out for nobody's hand in the darkness where nobody usually stands. Then I poked through the house in each cranny and nook, but I found somebody each place that I looked. I searched till I'm tired, and now with the dawn, there's no doubt about it. Nobody's gone. So that's an interesting poem to think about. It's almost like Shel Silverstein has named someone nobody. So it gets a little bit confusing. But the other way to look at it is the person in the poem might be walking around and thinking, I don't have any friends, nobody likes me, nobody is my friend. When really, that's not true. Nobody is just gone. And then pretty soon you've got somebody for all of the things that you need. So just remember those things. Be who you are. Be happy with the friends that you have. And know that it's okay to feel lonely or to feel like you don't have as many friends as you might want sometimes. And then with more time that goes by, you have more friends. So have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.